My name is Elena Sokova. I'm the Executive Director of the Vienna Center for Disarmament and Non-Proliferation. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to the webinar focused on Disarmament for Educators. It is organized by the United Nations Office for Disarmament Affairs, UNODA in Vienna, in cooperation with the Vienna Center for Disarmament and Non-Proliferation that I represent today. The webinar culminates a program by the UNODA to strengthen disarmament and non-proliferation education in Southeast Asia. However, the topic of today's discussion, disarmament education for those involved in education, professors and instructors at college, university, or in professional settings, is of paramount importance. Therefore, we decided that we open this webinar to all who is interested and could benefit from the discussion with those involved in teaching, developing educational resources, and promoting disarmament and non-proliferation education among their colleagues, also engaging the next generation in disarmament and non-proliferation work and programs. And overall, I must say that focus on capacity building in this area is very close to my heart. I spent many years at the James Martin Center for Non-Proliferation Studies in Monterey and organized numerous workshops for educators in teaching disarmament and non-proliferation in various countries and regions. The VCDNP, where I work now, also offers courses on nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation for diplomats and practitioners. And occasionally we also have professors, university professors, who take that course when they think that they could bring this theme and discussions into their classroom. And today I'm extremely delighted to chair this session where our today's panelists will share their own experience in teaching disarmament, share the resources available, their plans for future, and lessons learned in teaching this important subject. Before I introduce our today's speakers, I'm extremely pleased to offer you a welcome video message from Ms. Izumi Nakamitsu, who is a UN Under-Secretary General and High Representative for Disarmament Affairs. I would appreciate if Alexander and others could help me to bring that on screen.
Ladies and gentlemen, I warmly welcome you to this webinar, Disarmament for Educators, hosted by the Office for Disarmament Affairs and moderated by the Center for Disarmament and Non-Proliferation. Disarmament education as a conceptual framework has progressed considerably since 1980, the year in which the World Congress of the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, or UNESCO, held the first major conference on the topic. Its importance and value has been consistently recognized over the past 40 years. From the 2002 United Nations study on disarmament and non-proliferation education to the United Nations Secretary General's Agenda for Disarmament, Securing Our Common Future, published in 2018, disarmament education has been seen as an essential in helping both diplomats and the public understand how disarmament and arms control can improve security and promote sustainable peace and development. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has called disarmament education a key contributor to the creation of a culture of peace and nonviolence. The overall objective of disarmament and non-proliferation education is to impart knowledge and skills to individuals to empower them to make their contribution as national, and world citizens to the achievement of concrete disarmament and non-proliferation measures. In today's webinar, you will hear from a panel of experts who, drawing on their personal experiences, will offer guidance and tools to help you tackle challenges in developing and implementing disarmament education programs. Please feel encouraged to share your own views and insights and reflect on opportunities and obstacles. I would like to take this opportunity to express my gratitude to the government of the Republic of Korea, as well as the Foundation Risoko Seikai for generously supporting this webinar. As the former president of South Africa, Nelson Mandela once said, "Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world." I thank and commend you as educators for working towards creating a culture of peace and non-violence and securing our common future. I thank you very much for your attention and wish you a fruitful discussion.
Well, couldn't have said it better. Thank you, UN Disarmament UN High Representative for Disarmament Affairs, Izumi Nakamitsu, for this welcome message. And many of the points really resonate with me, and I'm sure with many of you who are engaged in the education in this area. But I think it would be extremely important to focus on our today's panel discussion and hear from those who practice or engaged in teaching non-proliferation and disarmament in their daily work. And it is my pleasure to introduce our panelists. We'll hear from Dr. Martin Senn, who is an associate professor of international relations at the University of Innsbruck, and also lectures quite often at the Diplomatic Academy in Vienna. Next, we'll hear from Drs. Niklas Schoernig, who is a senior research fellow with the Peace Research Institute Frankfurt. He's also a visiting lecturer at Goethe University Frankfurt. And finally, we'll hear from Ms. Sabariah Kader Ibrahim, who is a research officer at the Malaysian Nuclear Agency, also involved in the Nuclear Excellence Center in the Nuclear Malaysia. And she's been involved in establishing national strategy in nuclear education and training. But I had a pleasure recently to speak to the group of women in nuclear in Southeast Asia, where she is a project leader. So without further ado, I'm extremely pleased that we have this distinguished panelist with us today. And I would appreciate if if Martin could start our discussion today. Dr. Senn?
Thank you very much, Elena, for this introduction, and thank you very much for inviting me to this important webinar. My short presentation will be structured around 4 lessons on how to design effective tools of disarmament education. So to give you some context, I have taken these lessons away from teaching courses on nuclear arms and nuclear disarmament in bachelor's and master's programs at European universities. So to give you the overall picture, the 4 lessons are: first, disarmament education has to use multiple perspectives. Second, disarmament education has to emphasize human agency. Third, disarmament education has to include counterfactuals. And fourth, disarmament education has to connect to live worlds. So those are the 4 lessons that I've taken away over the years, and I would now like to elaborate on those 4 lessons very briefly. So lesson number 1, as I said, disarmament education has to use multiple perspectives. And I think this is really, at least for me, one of the core things that I try to convey in my courses, that there are many perspectives on nuclear weapons and nuclear disarmament. And this lesson also departs from the observation that teaching and learning about nuclear weapons has long been dominated by the state perspective. So the debate about nuclear weapons was predominantly about whether and how nuclear weapons make states more or less safe. But in order to understand what these weapons are and what they do, requires us to really take on multiple perspectives on the issue. So, for example, a very important perspective is, of course, the perspective of the victims of nuclear weapons use, production, and testing. Another perspective is also the perspective of scientists that worked on nuclear weapons. And in this context, for example, I'm frequently using the film The Day After Trinity, which includes interviews with scientists that were involved in the Manhattan Project, and really gives students an insight on how the scientists coped with also the political dimensions of the technology that they were developing. Another important perspective that I'm frequently using in my courses is the cultural perspective. So for me, understanding nuclear weapons and approaching also disarmament issues also means that you have to look at nuclear weapons through this cultural perspective. That means the perspective that is included in films, in books, and in other cultural artifacts. So for example, I introduce my students to the work of H.G. Wells, his famous book, The Last War, in which he already writes about the possibility of a nuclear war and of a reconfiguration of international order after nuclear war. And he published this book in 1914, so way before nuclear weapons were invented. But this is already a very important first cultural perspective that I give my students. Another cultural artifact that I'm using frequently is the movie Threads that was produced in Great Britain in the 1980s, and this is also very useful in conveying the message that nuclear weapons would be really harmful on human societies if they would ever be used. I also introduce students to novels like On the Beach or Swan Song to stimulate their thinking about what would happen if nuclear weapons were used. How would mankind react in terms of political orders and things like that. So the first lesson is, in order to understand what nuclear weapons are and what they do, requires us to use multiple perspectives, and this works pretty well in the courses that I've taught so far. And I'm also very happy to share my course material if you want me to. Lesson number 2, disarmament education has to emphasize human agency, also very important in my view, because there is a tendency towards technological determinism. This means that there is a view that nuclear weapons force us to act in certain ways. And this view is also very much ingrained in the way we speak about nuclear weapons. When we speak about nuclear weapons proliferating, when we speak about the need for nuclear deterrence as long as nuclear weapons exist, this means that human agency is removed, and there is a lot of technological determinism going on. And this, for me, as a disarmament educator, it's very important to re-inject human agency, to say, well, humans have a choice and they can choose to act differently. And in this context, I'm using examples, well-known examples, such as Colonel Petrov, who did not believe the warning of an incoming ICBM strike and choose to react differently than was expected from him. There's also this documentary movie, I think it's called The Man Who Saved the World, which tells the story of Colonel Petrov, who was retaking agency, who chose to act differently. I'm also using the example of Ronald Reagan, who came to believe in the necessity of disarmament and paved the way of nuclear arms reduction despite strong pressures towards nuclear armament. And I'm also using many examples of collective agents, organized civil society that campaigned against nuclear weapons, and in this context also influenced the decision-making of states. Lesson number 3, disarmament education has to include counterfactuals. When we talk about the history of nuclear weapons, in hindsight, history often appears as a straight line, and we tend to forget about forks in the road, contingencies, and paths not taken. It's therefore important to highlight alternatives that could have happened but did not. And in my view, this reflection on alternative history also stimulates thinking about alternative futures and is therefore an important stimulus for change. For example, in my teaching, I introduce different models of political order that were debated in the course of nuclear history. So different models about how to control nuclear energy. For example, the model of a world state, or the model of a supranational organization that controls nuclear energy. So this is a very important part of disarmament education, to say, okay, there were alternative histories, and there were alternative models, alternative pathways that could have been taken, but that were not. And this is also important for reflecting on future developments. For example, when I give my students those different models that could have developed, this also helps them to understand what the current nuclear order is all about. That it's about state control, that it's about predominantly a small group of states that really controls this political order, because they have a contrast which helps them to understand what the current order is about, and also to think about alternatives on how to change the current order. Final lesson number 4. Disarmament education has to connect to live worlds. So for many students, in Europe at least, nuclear weapons are a very distant danger. As sociologists would say, nuclear weapons are not part of their life world, not part of their everyday experience. The issue of nuclear disarmament has little salience, and it competes with other more salient issues such as climate change or currently the COVID pandemic. So for me, the key challenge of disarmament education is how to make the issue of nuclear weapons and nuclear disarmament more salient, how to drive the message home that nuclear weapons are already part of students' life worlds in one way or the other. So that they are already here, that they are affecting our life already. And I have developed different strategies on how to increase the salience or how to connect nuclear weapons to the life world of students. The first strategy is of bringing nuclear weapons closer to students is to bring them closer in space. So in Austria, for example, I always ask my students, so what do you think? What's the closest location of nuclear weapons, the closest to the Austrian border? And they usually come up with all kinds of ideas. Somewhere in Germany is Belgium, some of them know that in Turkey, and then I say, no, it's Italy. It's northern Italy at least, so that's not very far away from Tyrol, where my university is. So you could imagine that in the case of a nuclear escalation, this would also affect us, because nuclear weapons are located nearby. Second strategy is to bring nuclear weapons closer in time, and this usually works with telling students about the fact that many nuclear weapons are still on hair trigger alert, that they are ready to be used at any moment, and that it's usually one person or a small group of persons that is deciding about the use of nuclear weapons. So it's not that they are resting somewhere in a bunker, but they are ready to be fired at any moment. So their use is close in time. Third strategy that I've used is to bring nuclear weapons closer through empathy. And this is again where the humanitarian perspective comes in. By using this humanitarian lens and showing students what nuclear weapons have done and what they could do is really connecting nuclear weapons to their lives world as humans. And what I've used extensively in my teaching is photo material by a Swiss photographer, Meinrad Schade, because he spent some time in Kazakhstan and documented the effects of nuclear testing in the former Soviet testing grounds. And this is something that is really like a shocking experience for my students when they see the actual effects of nuclear weapons, not even nuclear war, nuclear testing. And this is also something that connects nuclear weapons to their life world. So those are the 4 lessons that I've taken away in my attempts of disarmament education. And I thank you for listening to me, and I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts and your lessons on disarmament education. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Martin. These are extremely valuable lessons, and I'm more than sure that your students are really lucky to have such a engaging and knowledgeable professor. And I fully agree with all of your points, and also using kind of connecting with the culture, particularly, and with the real life, that makes such a big difference. But we need to move forward, and I'm really pleased to invite Dr. Niklas Schoernig to provide us some of the recommendations that he has, and also provide an overview of some of the resources he has been developing over the past several years. Niklas, please.
So hang on. Yeah, good morning, Elena. Thank you for the kind introduction, and also a good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you may be at the moment. The question now is, can someone start my presentation, or shall I share my screen? Okay, the presentation is starting. Great, that's it. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah. After hearing what Martin said, I would really like to comment on many of the issues he just raised, but I will focus on my presentation, and I will present a concrete learning online resource, our EU Non-Proliferation and Disarmament e-learning course. And I will give you a short insight into how I used the course as the basis for my seminar Introduction to Arms Control at Goethe University Frankfurt in the winter term 1920. Next slide, please. The course consists of 18 standalone learning units at the moment, covering a broad range of topics related to arms control, disarmament, and non-proliferation, presented by 28 experts, 14 male, 14 female. I will go into more detail in a minute, but just to give you an idea of the course, so far we have more than 170 videos provided by the experts. The course is highly accessible. For example, all videos do have subtitles, and it's optimized for screen readers, etc. And we offer 2 optional certificates, one covering the first 5 learning units and the other covering all units. Next slide, please. Or next, please, yeah. The use of the e-learning units is completely free because we receive our funding directly from the EU. But the course is an independent scientific project, not bound by any directive, guideline, or restriction. And it's run by the EU Non-Proliferation and Disarmament Consortium and managed by my institute, PRIF. Users of the e-learning units do not have to register. You only need to register to gain the certificates. Otherwise, we don't track you at all. Next slide. At the moment, our 18 learning units cover the following topics, and you can read it on the left side. We have theory of arms control, disarmament, and non-proliferation. We have 6 units on WMD. We have a unit on landmines and small arms and light weapons, on European conventional arms control, which at the moment seems a little bit like a historical document, unfortunately. We have one on export controls, on compliance, space, emerging technologies, and we added new learning units on gender and disarmament, disarmament law, and the UN disarmament machinery recently. And over the next 2 months, 2 more units are to come. All units aim at diplomats, journalists, and students, starting at BA level, but I'd say they are more suitable to MA students in my experience. The units do not have to be worked through in any particular order. As I said before, each unit stands on its own and can be studied without the others. Next slide, please. All units do have a similar structure of 5 chapters, plus 1 additional chapter with links and further reading suggestions. The didactic concept is a mix of video and text-based info pages, plus short animations, interactive maps and elements, and short quizzes to activate the students. The average unit can be completed in a little bit over 1 hour, but I would estimate that 1 hour 20 to 1.5 hours is more realistic, depending on the student's prior knowledge. Next slide, please. The units were first published in 2017 and have been updated sometimes less strongly, depending on the topic. In winter term 1920, I taught an introduction seminar into arms control at Goethe University on MA level. The syllabus for this seminar consisted of 12 selected units. Next slide, please. The seminar followed the flipped classroom concept, where the students work through the online material as the basis for debate in the seminar. There was no other reading material offered, nor necessary to follow the debate in class. However, one condition was to take the exam was that you had to pass the full online certificate covering all 15 at that time units. So in order to take the final exam, students just had to dig into all units rather than the 12 we debated more in more detail in class. Next, please. Another options for an advanced course, for example, could be to ask for a certificate as a prerequisite for participation to a seminar, so guaranteeing that all students have the same basic knowledge to build on. Next slide. So the reactions of my students were overly positive as the results of an anonymous evaluation conducted by the university shows. 82% of the respondents fully agreed that the e-learning offered an improvement for their learning. 91% agreed or fully agreed that the e-learning offer and the classroom sessions were well connected. I think I have to work on that a little bit more. 97% agreed or fully agreed that the teaching content of the e-learning offer was well understandable. And 83% agreed or fully agreed that the e-learning offer increased the motivation to deal with the content of the course, while the remaining 17% at least slightly agreed. In summary, I'd say the vast majority of students viewed the use of the course as enhancing to their study experience. Final slide, please. Coming to the end, what is to come? We will publish 2 new learning units in the next month and continue with our constant updating on the units. Next year, we will present a new and fresh design for the older units, and we will publish significantly revised versions from 2023 on. So, I will end by inviting you to check out our offer. Feel free to send us comments and critique. And if you want to know the latest news regarding new units and any other information regarding the course, simply follow me on Twitter. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Niklas. Much appreciate your overview. This is a fantastic resource, and I can attest to it. We use the different modules of the e-learning or units of this resource to offer to students from technical universities. We conducted at least 2 courses in the past couple of years focused on graduate students or advanced students in science and technology. And the units you have are extremely helpful and really brought everyone to the same page for the classroom discussion. Let me put it this way. We had last year bio and chemical program students. So the units you have there are just fantastic. Yeah, I will do promotion of our own resources later if we have time, but now I would really like to give the floor to Sabariah and hear from her. It's a little bit of a different area of work. It's more in the professional setting, but I think it's also extremely important to see how these resources and how the non-proliferation and disarmament education could be pursued in the professional setting. Sabariah?
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. We cannot see you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. There's a problem with my camera. I've tried two cameras, but it's not working. Yeah, it's fine.
No problem. Why don't you just take it away?
Okay. Okay. So can you see my slide at the moment?
Yes, we can see your slides. Just press start the presentation icon. Perfect.
Okay, my presentation says, yeah, I will share a different perspective of non-proliferation educations because we are at the research institute. So education is more on the universities or more an academic part. So as a research institute, I would like to introduce a little bit of my institute. I'm from Malaysia. So my organization is Malaysia Nuclear Agency, is a national research center. It's established in 1972 with the ambitions to go for nuclear power. But yeah, fortunately or unfortunately, we have found other reserve of energy, which is oil. And but we have 1 megawatt research reactor. So along the progress, we have the commitments towards the safe use of ionizing radiation. We have established a regulatory body in 1985, and then in 2000s, IE had recognized us as a regional training center for radiation safety, transport and waste training facilities in Asia Pacific region. So we have been training many participants in the Asia Pacific, including the Middle East and Southeast Asia. So in 2005 and 2011, we have received IAE Duta Education and Training Appraisal Mission on our education program. And 2015, ITRES, another education and training appraisal missions by the IE, but specifically on nuclear engineering courses. In 2017, we have received ORPAS, occupational radiation protections appraisal missions, and also IPAS is for physical protections appraisal missions by the IEA. So I'm just sharing with you the status of radiation workers in Malaysia. So the radiation activities encompass all activities of ionizing radiation, especially on industry, medical, and non-destructive testing. And we have established a Center of Nuclear Excellence on providing training program to the radiation workers, to the policymakers, to the public, that is on the courses on the radiation safety and health, on the medical non-destructive training, environmental safety and health, technology management, international training this is for the IE training program, and also nuclear science engineering. That is in nuclear science and engineering courses, we have courses on the non-proliferation, safeguard, and nuclear security. So the nuclear infrastructures and stakeholders involved in developing the training program or the nuclear training education system at Malaysian Nuclear Agency is a regulatory body, because the syllabus has been set up with the regulatory body. So we are one of the training provider, which is some of the we are the government institution. So some of our private institution had also provide training program related to radiation safety and also non-proliferation and disarmament. And on certification body, there are certain training program that need certifications, and educational institutions, especially for the universities. So they provide resources and also research and also speakers for the training program. So this is stakeholders that I mentioned that involved in developing the training program, the syllabus, and we also um, get advice from the certification body, universities, industries, policymakers, NGOs, regulators, and also scientists that are involved in the use of ionizing radiation in Malaysia. So I have found out there is a gap of uh, um, women in the nuclear security and non-proliferations network. So we have decided to have to establish a project which is Women in Nuclear at Southeast Asia this year. So the purpose of uh, this project is a network to empower women working in nuclear security and non-proliferation in Southeast Asia through networking, mentorship, and knowledge sharing. So I have found out that there is no network among there is network of women in nuclear at Malaysia and Indonesia, but not in other Southeast Asia countries. So I have met a lot of talented young professional females that are very passionate in nuclear security and non-proliferation. So I thought that is a good idea to have this kind of um, network or professional network for. So we have established this WinC initiative. So I have organized a 6 series of mentorship series talk that are featuring prominent leaders from the nuclear industries from international and Southeast Asia countries. And the objective is to address the role of female in nuclear security and non-proliferations efforts, because women play different roles and different perspective on non-proliferation efforts. I mean, it's added value to the efforts, and it's also create awareness among leaders and policymakers on the role of women on nuclear security and non-proliferation. So we have established, I mentioned before, we established a national strategy on education and training in the radiation transport and waste safety. This is including uh, non-proliferations, safety, security, and safeguard. So we have developed a national education and training program, uh, develop a continuous training program that is needed for radiation workers or industry player to be trained every year. It's a refresher training program. And then we develop a national competency and certification scheme. There's a requirement for certain training, certain certain subject to be certified, or certain radiation workers to be certified, and then retain trained human capitals, and also finally develop educational institutions. So this is a strategy models that we came with. First, discussions with all the stakeholders, the regulatory body, research institute, which is Malaysian Nuclear Agency, other educational institute, which is the universities, certification bodies, and professional and scientific associations. Uh, the These stakeholders uh, came out as a steering committee. So the government support as a catalyst by funding and commitments toward the sustainable education and training program. And then we established working committee to help with the data collection, developments and evaluation. So the goal is to have a policy, education and training policy and radiation safety and health, and also came out with a strategy and network to finally achieve a sustainable education and training program in the radiation safety and health. So the conclusion that I can conclude here is as a commitment to preserve Southeast Asia region as a region of free of nuclear and weapon of mass destructions. So education and training efforts is really important because it promotes towards international peace and security. And through these courses, the importance of Treaty of Non-Proliferation (NPT) as are highlighted. This is to promote Southeast Asia as a nuclear weapon-free zone, and also other nuclear-free weapon zone as well. So effective partnerships of key stakeholders, including the civil society, private sectors, and academia on the education and training efforts are essential to pursue for nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation. As I mentioned, that there's a lot of stakeholders involved in this efforts towards non-proliferations in Malaysia and Southeast Asia. So this is some pictures that I would like to share with you.
I really appreciate your efforts in promoting the professional development in nuclear non-proliferation and nuclear security. And I'm really delighted that there is a strong kind of interest and new efforts to engage more women in this work. I may ask you to maybe later ask a question, or I'll ask you a question if we have time, about specifically the collaboration with the academia. But in the meantime, I would encourage all of our participants to, if they wish to ask a question or provide a comment, to speed up things, to unmute themselves and ask their question. Please indicate who you ask the question to. I see somebody is already unmuting himself or herself. If not, then maybe what I would actually ask a couple of questions of our speakers. I would like to maybe pose the first question to Martin, to Dr. Senn, is how do you see any difference in terms of interest to the topics of nuclear non-proliferation and disarmament? Do you see an increase of interest lately among the younger population, or there is an opposite, somewhat a decrease in that interest? You've been teaching, as far as I understand, for quite a while, so it would be good to hear some of their perspectives from you.
Shall I answer immediately, or?
Yeah, why don't we do it?
Okay.
I see there is a hand. I will pass the microphone to the next afterwards.
Yeah, thank you very much for this very good question. What I can see is that, at least in my view, that students tend to become more interested, but it's not like a huge increase. So what is also interesting is how interest change in the course of the seminars that they are taking. So most of them come in with a vague interest in terms of this, in terms of deterrence. So they approach the topic from the deterrence perspective and want to learn more about, okay, so how does deterrence work, and then so the classical topics. And the more they learn and the more perspectives they get, the more they move away from this perspective, and the more the interest change towards, in particular, learning more about the long-term effects on the environment of nuclear testing, for example. So here you can really tell that you can guide them away from this classical approach, which is important, yes, but which is not the only perspective. And so you can really shape the interest, and they become more interested in the actual effects, because they can see that nuclear weapons effects are not like in the distant future, in the case of nuclear weapons being used again, but that they have actual effects on the daily life of many people. And this is something that really raises the interest. I hope this answers your question.
Oh yes, thank you so much for sharing that experience. It's for me, it's also have always been kind of a big question. Is like how much there is interest among the next generation to these topics. I see Leila Henny has her hand up. Please unmute yourself. I think Niklas also wants to come in maybe with a comment to this question, but first I'll ask Leila.
Hello?
Hello, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello? Okay.
Yes, please.
Hello? Okay.
Yes, go ahead with your question.
Okay, so my question is, it's not really a question, but it's just something that came up to my mind. I thought that maybe I would ask the guests and the speakers here, because I'm from Algeria. I'm actually a lecturer at the university. I teach international law, and I've been doing so for almost a decade. Then here in Algeria, there is, as I've been hearing you, when there is no nuclear activities in your country, or there is no actual risk in the neighborhood, it seems that learning or teaching this matter seems irrelevant, and almost you can't get the students' attention, or you can't get the students really involved in those studies. But then it's not just about the students. For me, it's a case how to, and here I don't know if you can help me, but I'm just sharing this with you. How can we, as teachers and people in academia, like convince those higher ups in Ministère in the higher education, I mean, those involved in the government, how can we really convince them that teaching disarmament and teaching nuclear non-proliferation is worth to be given a course of education as master's or any higher education level? So is it worth trying it? And would working with in the private sector for education is better, or trying to convince those responsible in the higher education? I know that you really can't help me with this, but I'm just curious.
No, that's a great question, Leila, and thanks for asking it. I think that it's really different in different countries and regions. And I know this issue in many countries is kind of a stumbling block to teaching it, because either the university leadership doesn't share the importance of it, or the kind of Ministry of Education authorities are not really supportive or see the point of teaching it. That's a difficult struggle, but maybe our speakers in the panel could share some of their views. And I know Niklas has his hand up, probably commenting on the previous question, but if you could also take the question from Leila, that would be great.
Yeah, thank you. I will start with the latest comment by Leila. As you said, Elena, the regional perspective is very important. In Europe, the whole idea of arms control has a long history. And it's, of course, not possible to just replicate this history in a very short time. So I would suggest to always go with the arms dynamics and arms control approach. Like, it's two sides of one coin. And many more conservative, even in Germany, many more conservative politicians or diplomats, etc., they all understand the logic of arms dynamics, of the classical approach Martin just mentioned. And so if you start there and then you add the arms control as one part of managing the whole stability issue, of managing arms dynamics, then you can end with disarmament, non-proliferation, etc. So I would always, start with a mixture here. That's my personal idea here, and I'm interested in what others think. Just commenting on what Martin said, I think my personal experience is that the students in my class have been born around the year 2000, and they don't have any recollection or idea of what the Cold War was. So this whole geopolitics perspective is not only new to them, but they don't understand it. They grew up with regional conflicts, with the US invading here, there, and but not with this whole two blocks facing each other perspective. And it's very difficult to get them interested in this because they don't understand it as relevant for their current view on the world, I'd say. So I was very intrigued that Martin is teaching all those movies and novels, etc. I do really have problems because all the movies and novels I know, they don't know. They don't know Dr. Strangelove. They don't know War Games. So how do I do teaching if my pop cultural references do not match? And that's a real problem for me at the moment. So I think you have, as an educator, you have to keep up. What are the series they watch? What are the movies they go to the cinema to watch? So you have to keep up and offer, for example, Homeland or other stuff they can relate to. That was my comment. Thank you very much.
Great suggestion, Niklas. I see Martin also wants to add to that discussion. Please, Martin.
Yeah, thank you. To address this question, how to get people in higher education on board for the topic, I think a fairly easy way is to make the case that nuclear weapons are one of the threats to humanity as a whole. So to move the topic away from this regional dimension, which is important, I completely agree, but to make the case that, okay, so how many threats are there for the survival of mankind? It's climate change, which is very much on the news these days, but also nuclear weapons, right? So there is no escaping nuclear war. It's not possible. And I think this is something that can also be used to make a case, okay, we have to so all educational systems have to address this challenge in one way or the other. So there's no escaping wherever you may be on the planet. What Niklas just mentioned is also a very important point, that you have to find a hook or a link to the everyday experience that students have. And yes, it is a challenge. It's a challenge, absolutely. And I'm not saying that I have like the miracle solution, but at least if you let students read a novel, or if you show them all the movies, they're starting to reflect and get a different perspective. But yes, this cultural disconnect is a great problem. I absolutely agree.
Great. Martin, since I have you on the microphone, there are actually two questions coming from our listeners. and viewers. One is from Masaka Toki, who is my dear friend from CNS in Monterey. And she, I would like to ask like second part of her questions. She really liked your point about empathy and connecting, learning from you know, the real life kind of examples and the impact on people. And she's wondering whether you use Hibakusha testimonies in Hiroshima and Nagasaki in your teaching. The second question, I think, also come to you from Megan Williams, who asks, what was the name of the Swiss photographer you mentioned? Because I don't think everybody got the name, so please.
Yeah, thank you for the questions. Of course, I also include the Hibakusha perspective. For example, I show my students the Nobel Peace Prize speech by Satsuko Thurlow, and then other also books. There's the one, I think it's called Hiroshima, the one that I'm using. I forgot the author now. So the Nagasaki and Hiroshima experience is very much part of my courses, of course. But also, for me, it's very important to also get the message across that nuclear weapons also killed after 1945, because this is something that many students have in mind, that they think, okay, they were used in 1945, okay, a lot of bad things happened, but ever since, nuclear weapons haven't killed, which is not true. And so I'm also using, in addition to the Hibakusha perspective, I'm also using material on the effects that nuclear weapons had when they were tested and also when they were produced. I think this is a very important aspect of getting the message across that nuclear weapons have killed also after 1945. They have killed people in the uranium mines. They have killed people on the testing grounds, and they will kill people in the long run when all the negative effects will become more with climate change and things like that, and on the Marshall Islands and things like that. So, but yes, the Hibakusha are very much part of my educational agenda. And the name of the Swiss photographer is Meinrad Schade. Meinrad Schade. I can also post it into the chat. And he did this photo work on Kazakhstan.
Thank you so much, Martin and Meinrad Schade. Great. And for all our listeners, the webinar is being recorded, and if you miss some of the names of the movies mentioned or the resources, you can probably pick up some of those later. We're actually a little bit over our time, but I kind of took liberty to extend it a little bit over 10 o'clock because we had some technical difficulties. And I don't see other hands going up, but I do.
There is a question in the chat.
There is one question that I see, and maybe that's what I will pose to our panelists, to each of them. And if they wish, they could also add some of their kind of last comments or whatever they would like to share at the end, and we will close afterwards. So the question is coming from Hizet Ferben Kaviar. He says, nuclear weapons represent the ultimate defense of the nation, but nuclear weapons are the most destructive, inhumane, and it kills millions of people. How we can convince our government to take part on this, or to participate, I guess, in the elimination of weapons. Can multilateralism play a big role to address this? I think that's the only question I saw at the moment, but Either you feel like to responding to this question or have some final thoughts for listeners, I would appreciate our panelists to take the floor and maybe offer like 1 minute response, because we need to wind down. Niklas, maybe I'll start with you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think what Martin just said is a very important issue. You need to show to politicians, to decision makers, the multiple perspectives on the issue. Just don't stop with the deterrence perspective, with the classical neorealist or realist perspective. Accept that this is a valid perspective, but add other layers to it, so that you have a broader and a more nuanced perspective. And I think this is the way to go. Just don't make up camps, like we don't want the whole strategic debate, we just want the humanitarian debate. Mix it, give all perspectives, and be open to new perspectives. And finally, I would like to recommend a novel. It's by the American nuclear scientist Jeffrey Lewis, and most will know him from Monterey. And he published the book, The 2020 Commission Report on the North Korean Nuclear Attacks Against the United States. It's a speculative fiction novel, but based on scientific facts how a nuclear strike could work and could happen, and what follows after it regarding the humanitarian catastrophe. It's a very well worth read. And with this, I'd like to stop. Thank you very much for having me. I have to jump to the next meeting, so have a good time wherever you are. Thank you.
Thank you, Niklas. Much appreciating your thoughts and your sharing all with us today. Martin?
Yeah, thank you very much. I can only emphasize the point that that Niklas made. It's really important not to understand using different perspectives as building up different camps. This is something that we unfortunately have seen with this whole debate about the treaty on the prohibition of nuclear weapons, that the debate about nuclear arms and disarmament is fragmenting even more into different ideological camps. I think this is not very useful. So we should appreciate other perspectives, other opinions, and try to learn from them, not to build camps and burn bridges. So this is very important. And with that, I think I'm also closing. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Martin. I fully agree with both you and Niklas in this respect. Sabariah, you have the last word here. Your final message to our listeners.
As a scientist and as a researcher, so what I could say is non-proliferation should be a concerted efforts of many organizations. So it is education is one of the tools, and for us, like IE Safeguard is one of great tools for non-proliferations, and yeah, it's a responsibility of the states and a responsibility of everyone. Yeah, I think that's all my comment on.
Thank you, Sabariah. One more time, wanted to applaud your efforts in working with women in your region. That's extremely important. And to close our webinar, just want to kind of revert back to what Izumi Nakamitsu said at the opening, including citing some of the words by Nelson Mandela about the education. But I also always remember a very short phrase that one of the former UN Secretary Generals used, Kofi Annan, where he said the education is just peace building by another name. So that's really why the education in disarmament and non-proliferation is that important. We are all focused on getting the life better for everyone on us, and those involved in teaching as professors, as researchers, as trainers, you are carrying that mission forward, and it's a great appreciation of your work from all of us. I would like to thank our today's panelists for their fantastic presentations and discussion, and all of you who joined the webinar today. But I also want to thank the UNODA office in Vienna and for the excellent support and for facilitating and establishing this webinar series and today's event. Thank you all. Please stay healthy, safe, and let us all wish all the best in promoting further disarmament and peace efforts. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Goodbye.
everyone. Take care.